Hi, I'm Frank from REV Robotics, and I'm here to show you guys how to string the lift kit. What you guys see here is a base kit, as well as an add-on kit configured as a carriage. You can find the instructions for assembling the entire lift kit on our website on the lift kit pages. It is a step-by-step guide. Hopefully we're going to make the stringing part a little more clear, as that is the most confusing part of the guide at this point. So we are going to first string the upstage of the lift. That involves attaching one of these turnbuckles to these tie downs, bringing the string up to the top pulley, and then back down to the bottom of the carriage stage. So you're going to need to take your string and run it through the turnbuckle and through your D-ring. It's probably best to use a self-tightening knot. For this application. Make sure the knot is nice and tight. It's not going to slip. And then trim the excess string. You'll notice I'm trying to be relatively economical with the string I'm using, as we don't have an infinite supply. Next, we're going to tie the string to the bottom of this turnbuckle before we run it through the bottom of this D-ring before we run it to the top pulley. Again, we're going to try and use a self-tightening knot. If you have any Boy Scouts on your robotics team, this is their time to shine. We're going to take the other end of the string, run it up through our pulley, and be sure to center it on the V-groove. Alright, so now you'll notice if I pull on this string, the carriage moves up. So now we need to attach this to the bottom of our turnbuckle. You'll also notice that the turnbuckle is fully threaded together. This is not the configuration we want to do the knot in. We want to fully expand the turnbuckle in order to give us the maximum amount of tensioning ability we can have on this turnbuckle. So now that it's fully expanded, we are going to add the string. Once again, we're going to use a self-tightening knot. So I'm going to go ahead and pre-trim the string so I've got a little bit less excess to work with. I think this is a safe bet right here. So we're going to try and tie this string as tightly as we can, while making sure the carriage and everything is at the bottom of its travel. Also make sure that the string is correctly seated in the V-groove when you're tying the knot. It's okay to be a little slack because you do have the travel of the turnbuckle, but you do want to be as close to tight as possible. So there's one knot, and I'm going to go ahead and double knot it just to be sure. So what you just saw was the turnbuckle unthreading itself. You can go ahead and thread it back on. just like that. Alright, so we're going to want to first tension this line before continuing on, just to make sure that we have enough travel available in our turnbuckle. Again, you want to make sure that your string is fully seated on your V-groove of the bearing. Okay. And now we tighten. There we go. So that seems relatively tight to me. And we can watch how when I shift this up, it forces, so I'm going to hold the carriage steady, and you can see how it, when you pull this up relative to the lower carriage, it forces the final carriage upwards. So now we need to attach our down line for the side of the lift. You'll notice that it is a bit tricky keeping everything in line when you're first stringing your lift. Once you have both the down line and the up line strung, it gets a lot easier to manage all of the different pieces of cord, and they don't fall off the V-grooves as easily. Okay, so now we need to expand our second turnbuckle in order to give us the maximum amount of travel. And one thing to remember with turnbuckles is one side is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and the opposite side of the turnbuckle is lefty-tighty, righty-loosey, to be extra confusing. And one of the things I like to do is match the side of the turnbuckle that I'm attaching to the D-ring, just so it's nice and consistent. I'm going to go ahead and cut a length of string in order to attach my turnbuckle to the D-ring. Once again, if you've got Boy Scouts on your team, you get them on this part. I'm sure their knot skills will be better than mine. Okay, so next we're going to attach the string to this D-ring down here, run it through our bearing, and then up to our turnbuckle. One thing that you will notice at this point is our D-ring is not perfectly aligned vertically with our bearing. This will cause problems when it comes to tensioning, as it'll introduce a cosine or sine error into the string, which will cause the tension to fluctuate during the full travel of the lift. So we're going to go ahead and loosen these screws and line it up with our bearing. I think I need to loosen them a little more. It doesn't have to be like 100% perfect, but the closer the better. Okay. Now we're going to take our string and tie it to our turnbuckle right here. Again, don't use too much string. We want to be relatively economical with it so we don't run out. sure it's nice and tight. All right, now we're going to run it through our bearing. Once again, we're going to want to make sure that our string rides directly on the V-groove. We're going to bring it up to our turnbuckle. You will notice at this point that I can yank on this string and the up line will take some tension, sort of automatically centering the lift in the correct location. Now if I pull in this orientation, you'll notice that the lift starts working the way it's designed to. I'm going to put some more force on the lift so I can tie a nice tight knot on the top of this string. Okay, now we go ahead and start tensioning our turnbuckle. When we string all 4 strings, we're going to want to make sure that the tension is roughly the same on all strings. So I can cut off the excess. And now we can watch how this carriage moves back and forth. So it's all now tied together via these 2 carriages. And you'll also notice that the bottom carriage moves the same distance as the center carriage as they move together. Another thing to point out is you want to make sure that the spacing of these 2 bearings matches the spacing of these 2 bearings. If these sets of bearings are spaced differently, the larger spacing, so whichever one is farther out, will set the total travel of the lift. Because again, they all move together. We're going to go ahead and start stringing the opposite side of the lift. The reason we recommend having 2 sets of strings in the up and in the down direction is in order to prevent racking of the lift when under load or rapid movement. The V bearings do a very good job at preventing that to begin with, but if you're trying to use this lift to raise your robot, you're going to want all the insurance you can have to prevent racking. So we're going to go ahead and cut ourselves another length of rope in order to attach our turnbuckles to the other side. And once again, I'm going to make sure that the same orientation of the turnbuckles is present in order to make it easier for myself later on. That is of course not mandatory, just a little bit better to do that. So we're going to go ahead and tighten that knot. Okay. And we're going to open this turnbuckle up all the way. So so we get the maximum amount of tensioning travel. Okay, so we're going to take some more string. We're going to go ahead and tie it to the bottom of our carriage. Once again, we're going to make sure we're at the very bottom of our travel. Again, we want to be relatively economical with our string. Don't use, too much more than you need to. And we're going to go ahead and tighten this knot down. Run it up through our bearing. We're going to go ahead and trim it off. It's a little easier to work with, so that should be plenty. Let's get the excess out of the way. Make sure our string is in the V-groove of the bearing. Looks like I used a little too much string. Once again, you want to make this knot as close to the turnbuckle as possible. Don't be too hard on yourself. If you can't, it's pretty tricky. Go. And now we're going to go ahead and tension this side. That's the wrong way. And nope, that was the right way. Oh, looks like our string fell off the V-groove. There we go. And let's go ahead and put a second knot on there just in case. Okay, so now we have 2 up lines and 1 down line. So we're going to go ahead and do the last down line. Again, we're going to confirm that the D-rings are in roughly the right place. Cut off a length of string in order to attach our turnbuckle to our D-ring. And we're going to go ahead and expand the turnbuckle. the way. Okay. Tie the bottom of the string to our D-ring. Tighten down that knot. Pass it through our bearings. There we go. Then once again up to our turnbuckle. Put a little bit of weight on the lift so it doesn't move. And tie it down. Alright, and we're going to go ahead and tension this turnbuckle. There we go. So these strings over here are a little loose. We'll go ahead and tighten them up. Alright, let's trim off the excess string. And go ahead and run our lift up and down just to make sure. Yep, seems to work nicely with controlled motion in both directions. So now we're going to string the first stage of the lift with our motor. So down here you'll see the assembly that we made to mount our motor. This will vary drastically depending on the team, the robot, and what exactly you're trying to do with your lift. You'll notice that this piece right here has two holes in it, just like your inside corner brackets. The top hole is the hole that we're going to use for the up line that's going to connect to our motor, and that's going to go from this hole up to the pillow block V-bearing at the top, then down to this pillow block V-bearing, and then over to the pulley on our motor. That whole thing lines up with this pulley section on our motor. This pulley section on our motor lines up with this lower hole on our inside corner bracket. It's important to make sure that your pulleys line up directly with your mounting points for your string. Again, we don't want to introduce any cosine or sine error, and it also ensures that you get good tracking on the V bearings and you're not dropping string. So we're going to go ahead and mount this motor first. Got my screws over here. Now, this implementation of a motor is not generally recommended, as the shaft of this motor is cantilevered. When implementing this on your robot, ensure that your shafts are fully supported without any cantilevers. That will significantly improve the service life of your gearbox, motor, and the reliability of your entire lift assembly. There we go. Now we're going to go ahead and string the down line first. We're going to take our length of string and we're going to fully open up our carriage assembly. So now that the lift is fully extended, we're going to string the down side of the lift. In order to do that, we're going to run our string through our lower hole, and tie it off. Make sure it's nice and tight. Then we're going to take our string all the way down. And in order for this pulley system to work, one side has to wind up the string while the other side unwinds the string. So we're going to go ahead and get it started with one wrap, and we're going to do this one clockwise from this orientation. And then we're going to want to secure our string to the pulley. So now that we've securely attached the down line of our string to our pulley, we can go ahead and rotate our pulley in order to bring tension into the down line. Remember, we're rotating this side of the string in a clockwise rotation. The up side of the string is going to get wound in a counterclockwise rotation. There we go. So now we are nice and taut right there, and we can cut off the excess of our string. So you're going to then run your motor in a clockwise direction in order to spool in the down line. I'm going to go ahead and use a REV FTC battery to do that. You're going to want to make sure that your string tracks correctly on your pulley. You may need to realign your pulley assembly based on this testing. That said, the tracking will get better once you have tension on both sides. There we go. So now that the motor is fully spooled up and the downside is tight, we're going to string the upside of our string. We're going to start with a length of string in order to attach our turnbuckle. So you're going to go ahead and cut off a little bit of string, grab your turnbuckle, and attach it to the top hole on your inside corner bracket. Might make it easier to run the string through if you either widen the hole out or use a lighter to fuse the ends of the string together. All right. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and open up our turnbuckle all the way. So first we're going to attach our string to our pulley and make sure that our downstring is fully wound up, and then we're going to take our string, wrap it around the bottom of our lower pillow block and V-bearing assembly, and then over the top of our upper pillow block and V-bearing assembly, and then through the top of our turnbuckle. And we're going to want to tighten this, tie this as tight as possible. We're going to go ahead and double knot it just in case. There we go. And now we're going to go ahead and tension the turnbuckle. And that's the wrong direction. If this turnbuckle doesn't have enough travel to bring you into full tension with your string, you can loosen this pillow block assembly slide it over to the side while the turnbuckle is fully loose, and then retighten it down and then tighten the turnbuckle some more. Alright, so our lift appears fully engaged, so we're going to go ahead and run it out in order to make sure it is working. Perfect. So we'll notice that our downstring has come loose. So this often happens. So we're going to need to adjust our upline in order to bring our downline into tight. So we're going to go ahead and loosen our turnbuckle and slide this guy over. So we're going to slide over this pillow block in order to give ourselves a little more room to tension our upline. So we're going to slide it over to here and tighten it back down. It's reasonably tight. Alright, now we're going to run it back down just to make sure everything works. So the issue that we're running into right now is the alignment of our lower pulley is somewhat problematic. It keeps popping the string off. So this lower pulley isn't in very good alignment, which is why we dropped the bottom string. So I have some adjustability in my assembly for that. It would probably be a good idea to have some adjustability on your robot as well. Now that I've adjusted the motor, I can run the upline once again. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this pillow block now that I'm doing the stringing again, so we get the maximum amount of travel out of our turnbuckle. So we'll slide that in, pass our string over, and we'll tighten it down. String over the top, pulley bearing through our turnbuckle. Okay. And we accidentally unspooled this just a bit, so we'll go ahead and tighten that up a little. Okay, now we'll go ahead and tighten up our turnbuckle. And my experience tells me that we're not going to quite have enough travel on the turnbuckle, so I'm going to go ahead and back off this bearing, slide it over, and then keep going on the turnbuckle. There we go. Then we're going to go ahead and run it upwards and back downwards to make sure that everything is tracking correctly. Okay, that looks good. And now for the downstroke. Excellent. So now you can see the REV lift moving up and down. Some of the strings do need some more tensioning and tweaking in order to get reliable. There's definitely some cosine error somewhere in here that's causing this problem, or one of my knots is too loose and is slipping. But that's the general idea. This lift is designed to work vertically, and a lot of the things that were making us have some trouble here don't quite give you as much trouble when you're doing it vertically. Let's go ahead and retension this side, because that should be nice and tight. Without travel. So one cosine error that I can see right now is that is not in the right spot. Okay. So given how little travel I have left on this turnbuckle, if I was still having tension issues with this line, I would untension it, untie it, and then retie it tighter and go from there. Same with this side. Part of my issue is that the string fell off the V-bearing over here. So I'm going to go ahead and undo this one a bit so that I can have some slack to replace the string. There we go. And retighten. Okay. There we go. This is the REV lift kit with a quick how-to on stringing it. I'm Frank from REV. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email us at support@revrobotics.com or give us a call.